Basically, the Bitso card is gonna be disabled. They're gonna sunset that product.
One of the conversations we were having in the early chat was like, is this good for crypto startups or that are trying to operate, or is this going to throw a massive wrench?
Crypto isn't a massive necessity in Brazil as it might be in Mexico, or as it might be in Argentina or Venezuela or Ecuador or Bolivia. But I think for the Brazilian market, you already have Nubank and you've got 100 other sort of Nubank follow-ons.
Brazilians are some of the most forward-thinking and hardworking people as a whole in Latin America. They are really prone to take risks. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Frontera, the podcast where we analyze what's happening in crypto in Latin America. I'm Ab, co-founder and CEO of Espacio Crypto, and with my brother Kush, founder of Odisea Labs. Hey, man, how's everything?
What's up, Ab? Another week. Lots of exciting things happening, particularly on the stablecoin front. I feel like a majority of the content for today's week is going to be focused on stablecoins, man. So yeah, excited to run through things and I think critically about how this particularly impacts Latin America, which is I think fundamentally like the core question of Frontera is like, let's analyze what's happening on the global stage and bring it back to how does this affect the most important crypto region.
Yeah, definitely. And this week we published an analysis. We invited Ben from Mantle. He's the most bullish person in LatAm. So if you want to get a little bit excited about the region, you should listen to this episode. He's doing BD at Mantle, pushing a lot the ecosystem in Latin America. So you need to go and subscribe to Frontera's newsletter. We're doing literally the best research for Latin America in English, in crypto. I'm certain about that. The quality of the content that we're creating is just outstanding. That's why we are partnering with Bitso for the Stablecoin conference. You know, this Stablecoin conference that's going to happen. Let me pull up this. It's going to happen from August 22nd, 27th, and 28th in Mexico City. Kush is going to be there. I'm going to be there. We're going to be moderating some panels. There's going to be a discount code for the Stablecoin conference. We're going to put it in the show notes. And dude, I'm really excited about this because first of all, we're going to hang out in my city, in Mexico City. And also the quality of the speakers is quite high. We have Daniel, the CEO of Bitso, Zach Abrams, the co-founder and CEO of Bridge, also head of crypto at Bitsa, Kush Sheffield, Shiraz, a good friend of Frontera and Espacio Crypto. He's the general manager of payments and commerce at Solana. So there's going to be so many good speakers, great content. We're partnering with Bitso for the Stablecoin conference. So yeah, I'd love to hear what do you think about this type of conference. I think that this is going to be the most important crypto conference in Mexico this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that I'm excited on a number of different fronts. So first off, with regards to Frontera, the reason we started this entire thing was to be able to platform these types of initiatives, right? And to draw energy and excitement towards conferences like this Stablecoin conference, and for us to be able to work closely and partner with Bitso on supporting the distribution of the conference and then sort of the content as well that'll be shared. This is like incredibly exciting. A lot of the subjects that we talk about in Frontera are sort of like front running probably a lot of the conversations that'll be going on there as well. So that's great too. Then when I think about the speakers and what this means for Mexico, as we know, and I don't know if you noticed that, but I said like the most important region for crypto, right? Like I actually have a really, really, really high conviction that is probably true. And therefore, I think like it just doubles down my conviction on like this work with Frontera. We've got like Dev Connect happening. We've got this Stablecoin conference happening. We've got a bunch of activations going on in the region. And therefore, what excites me is this is just a confirmation of that. But tell me, is Latin America the most important region for crypto?
I think that, yeah, it is definitely. You just need to look at two parts: the size of the economy, the population, and the acceleration of crypto adoption. When you multiply those three things, definitely this is the most important region. That's why people like Santi from Inversion are building here. We have a bunch of news around payments on why that's so relevant. So if you want to go to the Stablecoin conference, they have a really interesting URL. It's stablecoinconferencelatam.com. We're going to put it in the show notes. And the discount code from Frontera is Frontera10. And you're going to get a discount on your ticket. We're going to be there. It's going to be really exciting. I think that we're going to record a couple of episodes there. And man, let's dive into the news that we have this week on Latin America. First of all, Bitso card was shut down. We discussed about that. Did we mention it last week? I don't remember. I think that we do, right?
No, we
No.
shared it in a few Telegram groups, but yeah, let's run
Oh,
through the
yeah.
news because actually there's like breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news. So basically, the Bitso card was it's gonna be disabled. They're gonna sunset that product. Um, as you all know, I was part of Bitso for almost 3 years. I worked really closely with several of the teams. One of the team was the Bitso card. We analyzed like which payment processor to integrate. At some point, we were analyzing how to do spending in different assets. Maybe if someone had a balance on Aave, Solana, whatever, how to do that. And the product manager in charge of this product was Edu Moore. Edu, Edu is one of the best product people in Latin America by far. He's an ex-Bain consultant. He did an MBA in MIT. Then he went to Nubank to work in Brazil in Nu. Then he worked at Bitso, and he's had like a really successful fintech career. And he was the person who launched the Bitso card from 0 to 1. And he posted this really interesting thread that got a lot of traction. Right now, it has like almost 400 likes, 47 retweets. And it says, Bitso just shut down its crypto debit card. I helped build it from 0 to 1. This is Edu Moore tweet. Launched in November 22, recently turned off. Let me tell you what I learned building the product that didn't make it and what I do differently. So basically in this thread, Edu goes through different elements on why the Bitso card was was shut down and the process of launching. He's really clear that he's not longer at Bitso. So this is information from the initial days of Bitso, how they launched it, and why at the end on why the thing didn't fly at the end is because the thing that he analyzes is that in order for Bitso to scale this payments product, they needed to invest a lot of money in basically reframing the way that it was built, because it was built like a debit product, and the strategy was having the product as a collateralized card where you can have any type of collateral. And in order to do that, you need to build different parts of the infrastructure. Also, I'm in Mexico, and a lot of people that I know uses the Bitso card or use the Bitso card. And one of the main complaints that they have was that it wasn't accepted at Oxxo. That not being accepted at Oxxo is like, I don't know, I buy at Oxxo 5 times a week. It's like a supermarket. It's like a mom and pop shop, but it's a chain. They have like 20,000 stores around the country. So it's something really basic for Mexicans to shop on. So I think that in the back end, Bitso had several problems in the payment processing, and they decided to shut down the product. My read is also that Bitso is really focused on the institutional side. They're crushing it in the Bitso business. They're doing the Stablecoin conference. Also, in the newsletter that we posted, we shared the things that we're bullish, bearish, and neutral on Bitso. And one of the most important things is that it seems that they are not winning the retail race against Binance. If you go to the App Store, the Binance app is at a higher level than the Bitso app in downloads. That's a pretty clear indication of who's winning the retail market. So that's the whole reading. So not winning the retail market is a costly product. They are focused on B2B, and that's why they shut down the Bitso card. What's your read, man?
Yeah. I mean, one of the takeaways was the operational lift. And in fact, this point is particularly relevant for our next news item. But one of the big challenges for the Bitso card was the fact that they basically had a lot of operational overhead to make this thing happen. And while the product was really successful, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a worthwhile business to pursue, right? And I think that's like the main, as builders are thinking about problem sets that they want to be exploring, is okay, there are things that the market will want. The question is it a profitable pursuit for you, right? I think that I commend Edu for sort of open sourcing those insights, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily always do that. They just talk about their successes and put the sort of wins at the forefront, and then any losses are just quietly sunset. So I do want to give Edu a shout out there. What I do think is interesting is the next piece of news, and we'll be able to tie these two conversations together. But we just had Visa and Bridge make a really big announcement yesterday, or 2 days ago. And essentially what people can now do is they can issue and offer stablecoin linked Visa cards to end customers through a single API integration, Now, a few different things are really interesting here. So one, Bridge was acquired by Stripe a few months back for $1 billion, right? So clearly this is like a big push, or I'm sure this is already on Bridge's roadmap, but I'm sure the Stripe integration really accelerated that. So basically this means that customers can now add these cards to digital wallets, and there are over 150 million people that accept Visa in the world, right? So it's a massive unlock. And I think it ties back to the Bitso conversation as well, because essentially what we're saying now is that Bitso doesn't have to do this massive operationally really expensive lift to offer these types of cards, but rather they could just use the Bridge API, right? The other fascinating point about this particular item, and this was sort of buried in the announcement, I'm not sure if you caught this, but guess which region this card is going to be rolled out to first? Latin America. So Argentina, Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico, Peru, and Chile are the first countries in the world to get this card. Or are able to access this API. So important because Latin America is clearly the focus here, number one. Number two, which by the way just makes me incredibly bullish on Frontera and this entire just venture. But number two, it also means that companies like Bitso will no longer have to incur all this huge overhead because I mean shipping a card is really expensive and arduous, right? So
now it'll be a commodity.
Exactly. And this is, but that's the way it should have always been, right? It shouldn't have been this like, oh, sexy thing, right? It's like, no, it's just a simple API integration. That's it. What's your read and take? I mean, how do you bridge these two things together? Yeah. This isn't relevant for Bundle. One of the conversations we were having in the Odyssey chat was like, is this good for crypto startups or that are trying to operate, or is this going to throw a massive wrench? And I'd love to explore that with you.
Okay, perfect. So a couple of things. The first one, I just want to point out the thing that you said. So this product between Bridge and Visa they're launching it in Argentina, Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico, Peru, and Chile. Spanish-speaking LatAm. They are leaving the king of the continent that it's Brazil, like the largest market. Why? Because I think that we've discussed this, that there are consultants that their whole thing is just helping fintech companies land in Brazil. Latin American fintech companies land in Brazil. That's how specific the market is and how different it is in Brazil, in other parts of Latin America. So I think that Visa and Bridge are being really smart because they have feet on the ground and they know that Brazil is a different monster. It's a huge country, huge territory. They have like a really advanced fintech ecosystem. We're gonna touch some points of Brazil in the next set of news. So that's my first like interesting insight. The second one, I think that whenever someone is scared for a product launch, that's a good thing. If people say this is gonna kill crypto products, so be it. Let's kill them. I mean, I'm building Bando and I'm in the payments industry, and if Bando shouldn't exist, it's better that it dies today than ever. You know, I'm sure that we're not gonna die because this doubles down on our thesis that payments processors are becoming payments protocols, and just a card is just an element of that. Today I was talking with a good friend that he's really deep into crypto cards and payments, and I told him, look, the way that I think about payments is that basically you need its supply, that the people that want to receive payments, demand people that want to do payments, and an escrow in the middle. You can make it as complex as Visa and MasterCard with acquiring bank, merchant bank, the merchant, the user, like a payment processor and a bunch of stuff, or you can have a smart contract. The end state, I think, is the smart contract, and we're working towards that. So coming back to the point that will this kill several crypto products? I think that actually it'll accelerate several crypto products. What do I mean by this? So there might be several products that are constructed with a really crappy ecosystem, like really crappy infrastructure, like with Web 2 payment processors, that it's really hard to do reconciliation and all of that. And now they can do it directly with Bridge. I think that this is great. Whenever a product is commoditized, now that it's a commodity, you can use it to build a stronger product stack. So that's the way that that's what I think. I think that thinking that this will kill crypto startups, I wonder who says that.
I think the idea is both, right? I think it's like both can be true, as most things in life. Is it simultaneously puts, I think, a lot of companies that were trying to crack the how do we issue crypto native cards, because there are a number of people, like I've seen people try to issue crypto native cards and build a lot of infrastructure there. I mean, people try to like tackle the POS, right, the point of sales machinery, and say, oh, we want to make this thing like work on crypto rails. So I think it definitely puts those companies in a challenging place, right? I mean, Bitso card just shut down, right, for a reason. And this was like, I think the same day the Visa announcement came through, funnily enough. So I think it puts those types of businesses in a challenging place where you're now having to compete against Stripe, Bridge, and Visa. But for companies like, let's say, Bando, it actually just made your life 100x easier. And it now allows you to put things out into the market with a single, basically line of code, right?
Yep.
And that was not previously possible.
And also, I think it's really exciting that these markets getting a lot of competition. We also have the folks at Rain, that their offering is something really similar. Their product is offering crypto-backed cards, payment cards, Visa cards, and they raised $24 million just a couple of weeks ago. I think that they announced this. Let's see, when do they? Oh, March 24th. So 1 month ago. And in 1 month, we've got this announcement from Rain, that I know that they are also really active in Latin America, and they have this announcement. We have this announcement from Visa and Bridge. This is just another validation of, I think that the next frontier and the next meta of crypto is payments, and the best region to do crypto payments in the world is Latin America. I also know, I have some alpha here, man. I know that Coinbase is hiring for a senior product manager in Latin America. So everybody's looking at this region. I mean, we cannot shout any louder. These are just news. These are facts.
Yeah, exactly. So, oh my God, just like, it's kind of surreal,
Yeah.
We were just talking about surfing before we started recording, right? And surfing's all about reading the ocean, seeing the waves that are coming, seeing the stuff that's coming, and positioning yourself in a place where you're in that sweet spot to catch the wave. And maybe we've spoken about this analogy before in Frontera, but I think that's exactly what we've done. Is we've basically been like, looked far out to the ocean, said there is this huge opportunity here. We swam for years to get out past the break, and now we're just waiting. And now there's a massive swell coming, and that's Coinbase, that's Visa, that's Bridge, that's Rain, that's all these other huge companies. That's Dev Connect, that's a stablecoin conference. It's like wave after wave after wave after wave, and to be able to just see that happen is really exciting.
And Frontera, in this analysis, Frontera is like the weather app that tells you,
Exactly.
okay, today is the moment that you need to go surfing, or stay at home. You're not gonna have good waves. And moving to the next set of news, man, I saw this in LinkedIn and I really liked it. Andre Sommersfeld, senior product manager at p2p.org, created this really good map of the crypto ecosystem in specifically in Brazil. And I really like these visual infographics. And I just want to remark, then again, this is such a proof of how big the crypto ecosystem is in Brazil. He divided the categories in things like stablecoin custody, payments, exchanges, blockchain protocols. Just for people, I think that this is the best proxy, just to understand the size and the diversity of the market in Brazil. I think that maybe we see tokenization or financial services, it's not clear how big the industry is, but just let's look at exchange and broker. In this category, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 local players just in Brazil, and 1, 2, 3, 4 international players. The international players are OKX, Binance, Deribit, and Coinbase. And in exchanges, brokers, Brazilians in this map are Novadax, Foxbit, Coinext, Mint, Mercado Bitcoin, and BTBank, I think. So the thing, just to share the size of the market, how many local exchanges are in the US? Like Coinbase, Kraken, a couple more maybe, but just in Brazil they have 6 local players. That's the size of the innovation that it's happening in Brazil. Do you know, Andrea, or what's your take on this like high level map?
I'm like having to squint to see everything that is on the screen.
Yeah.
And I think that's like indicative of how massive this market is, but how different the market is as well, right? It's like huge, lots of innovation going on, but how many people have heard of BRLA or Transfero or even Mercado Bitcoin, right? Like a lot of people, I mean, if you were to ask your average Mexican, for example, like, have you heard of, I don't know, Mercado Bitcoin? Like there's a very high likelihood they probably haven't, right?
Yeah.
And this is the most important local Brazilian crypto company. And so the reflection here for me is basically that I see this entire map representing what people should be looking at, and it ties back to our previous point around why Bridge may not have launched this product in Brazil. One, I think it's a very, very competitive market. I think Brazil is a competitive market. Doesn't mean you can't win there, but I think you just have to be very thoughtful about how you engage Brazilians. But I think that it makes sense that they would not necessarily focus on launching this Visa product in Brazil yet. It's like, hey, we're going to test this out, see what the sort of problem sets are. Because the reality is, like, for a lot of people, crypto isn't a massive necessity in Brazil as it might be in Mexico, or as it might be in Argentina or Venezuela or Ecuador or Bolivia, right? But I think for the Brazilian market, you already have Nubank and you've got 100 other sort of Nubank follow-ons. So what I think will happen, and I think that's really the core question of this type of conversation and podcast, is, well, what happens here? And particularly relevant for Frontera, where we talk about this sort of blending of global products with local players. Because we see a lot of local players in Brazil, but we also see a lot of international players. And as we've spoken about before, like, one of the unique things about this industry is that liquidity is global. And you don't have the same network effects and defensibility that Rappi did in Latin America in the same way that a local, in fact, we've seen this, right? As soon as Binance or Bybit came into Brazil, a lot of the local players started losing a lot of market share. So I think the main thing is the two takeaways. One, there's a lot of crypto activity going on. It's a fairly competitive market, probably one of the most competitive markets in Latin America. And number two, what happens to the local players, right? So how do you think about this balance between kind of the global massive whales that are coming in, the Visas of the world, right? They might have put a few Brazilian startups out of line right now, versus the local players and how they should be navigating this fierce competition that, say, this Coinbase like product lead in Latin America is going to be tackling.
Yeah. Well, I think that for me, it's really clear that when a market has so much diversity, that means that there are two elements there. It's really pulverized, and there is a lot of capital spread across different startups. When that happens, I think that there are two really important opportunities. The first one is that a lot of these companies shouldn't exist. And I don't mean the ones that are specifically in the map that we showed, but we're talking about a diverse Brazilian ecosystem. A lot of these companies shouldn't exist. And the second one, there are some companies that are going to be the next unicorns, and they're going to be great. And the middle part is the most interesting. These ones that are in the point of, they could be acquired by Bridge or by Stripe. They could be acquired by Visa. They could be acquired by Nubank for specific capabilities. So I think that a pulverized ecosystem is a great opportunity for consolidation. How do you see this? How do you see consolidation happening in crypto in LatAm?
I mean, I think one thing I would love to see more of, and we'll probably start to see happen, is more mergers and acquisitions start to take place in Latin America, right? And so I know for a fact that a lot of the big players are making offers to smaller, more agile, more local teams. And this is across the stack. Like, this is, whether that's centralized exchanges or infrastructure providers and so on. There's basically sort of these, and the reality is, like, you have to be really, really proud and really convicted in what you're building to, like, not take that offer on. So I think that I'm seeing that we'll start to see more of these offers occur and happen. I am always an advocate of local players really thriving, but I also understand there are dynamics in the market that may not be conducive to that happening, right? So yeah, I mean, it's something we've spoken about, right? Is like, I want to see local players win, because I think those are the ones that maintain the most value locally in economies, versus like come in, generate a lot of value, and then it ends up sort of leaving the region. So how do you think about that dynamic and local player value generation versus like global value capture?
Well, I mean, I'm all into acquisitions, because something that I've seen is that when a company gets acquired, it's a way to accelerate really strong product teams. In a sense that, in two ways. If the acquisition is successful, that most of these acquisitions are not, and they are failed, and the company is never able to deploy what they pay for. But the thing is that they accelerate the team per se. So you see around the world that when a team is acquired, maybe two startups come out of that team. The most obviously, the most famous example is PayPal, right? The PayPal mafia and all of that. But in Latin America, in my experience, that's something important because it helps builders that are not necessarily founders become founders. For example, people that who are the founders right now, people coming out of Bitso, people coming out of Nu, people coming out of Kavak, people coming out of Rappi. And that's because we need to see good product companies or just product companies to build better product companies. So I think that consolidation is really important in the region. And specifically in Brazil, we are going to have Stanley from the Brazil Crypto Report soon in Frontera, and I'm really excited for that episode. And the thing is that I want to tie in the next news is that Brazil keeps demonstrating that it's a really forward-thinking country regarding how financially complex they are. That's another way of telling that they are the most diligent country in Latin America. I wanted to put it like elegantly. And the thing is that, for example, this week, the first ETF or the first spot ETF of XRP in the world went live in Brazil. And a lot of people might say, like, why the hell? Why XRP? Well, after Solana, this might be the next most important ETF coming for the financial markets. And guess what? I think Brazil already has a Solana ETF, right?
They were the first to launch a Solana ETF. So the first to launch the Solana ETF, first to launch an XRP ETF. And the next thing is also really interesting. But yeah, I mean, this is just like crazy, man. What's going on in Brazil, right? I'm super like Stanley from the Brazil Crypto Report is going to come on and give us the rundown. He's part of the Filecoin Foundation team, but lives in Brazil. So yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to call on you as the guy who spent a lot of time in management consulting in Brazil. What's going on? Why are we having like the first global ETFs from Solana and XRP coming out of this region?
Man, and also tying up the final news of DGNS in Brazil, Itaú, the largest bank in Brazil, now their users are able to buy Solana, USDC, and XRP from their trading app. It's like for people in the US, it's like if you could buy Solana, USDC, and XRP through your Chase app. And that's the level of embeddedness these assets are in the Brazilian ecosystem now. So my take, the way that I see it is that Brazilians are some of the most forward-thinking and hardworking people as a whole in Latin America. They are really prone to take risks, and also they have the way that they regulate and has enabled this. For example, we were looking at Brazil has 6 local exchanges. In Mexico, we have 1. In Argentina, they have maybe 4 or 5 also, but in Colombia, they have like also 1, maybe 2, and those are not the winners. Binance is the winner in Colombia, for example. So I think that it's also, as it's a really dense market, it brings a lot of opportunity. And the final thing is that also I think that Brazilian companies are less afraid of taking risks than traditional companies. Like in the same industry, they are more prone to take risk. So I think that that's why we're looking at this. I'd love to hear
the other thing, like
Stanley.
macro. Yeah, I mean, just like one thing to mention there is the macro conditions, man. Like the AI has been down only since pretty much 2012, right? So naturally, you're going to be seeking a safe haven, because why would you? We don't talk about hyperinflation that goes on in Brazil because it's much more subtle. But if you look at the AI USDT chart, it's down only. And so I think that's the other piece that is crucial here as Brazilian companies are seeking safe havens as well. I was just listening to the All In podcast, and they were talking with they mentioned some Brazilian billionaire, and it's like the only place that I can allocate to in size is the US, right? Yeah, look at this. This looks like your local shitcoin. It's down big, right, over the course of the last 15 years. And so this is insane. So I think that it just makes sense that like Brazilians are kind of pushing the envelope when it comes to financial innovation, and no surprise there. And one of the other pieces of news that we had speaking of seeking sort of new safe havens was this news. Melius, right? So Melius is a locally traded, publicly traded company on the Brazilian public stock exchange, and they basically adopted a MicroStrategy like a move here when it comes to their holdings. So they allocated 10% of their cash towards Bitcoin. So they bought about $4 million worth of Bitcoin, accumulated about 42,000. 42 Bitcoin. 42,000 would be insane. That's a 21 capital group is trying to accumulate. But no, they accumulated 42 Bitcoins at 90,000 roughly. And they are taking a lot of inspiration from the MicroStrategy model and basically saying, look, if you want to hold menus, you can do that. And there's also the opportunity for speculators to basically lever up sort of their investment in menus will keep sort of reinvesting that capital and using some of its equity to basically take out loans and then buy more Bitcoin. And they're, the interesting thing is they have an operating business as well. So in theory, they should be able to cover a fair amount of the principal and the interest as well of that loan that they'll be taking out. So that's an interesting move here. And again, it feels like 75% of this podcast has been talking about Brazil. So yeah, how do you see this? Like Melius move, basically, pretty much copy pasting MicroStrategy, but in a different market and for totally different investors.
Well, I think that there's an opportunity globally to do the MicroStrategy play. I mean, if they can do it, why can't anyone else do it? The thing is that the most important part of the MicroStrategy play is that you need to have a stock that you can put as collateral to buy more Bitcoin. So that's your, like, instead of having a token that you can print, you have a stock that you can lever on, right? So in order for these type of strategies to work, you need to have this asset, this stock. The thing that gets me a little bit worried from other parts of the world doing it is that capital markets in the US are obviously more evolved. And what will happen if the Melius stock like crashes, right? I think that it has a lot more volatility and this can go really, really wrong. The thing is that right now they haven't created this depth to buy more Bitcoin. They could do it. And if they do it, they will be following the MicroStrategy play. Today, their treasury allocation to Bitcoin is the first step. So people are speculating that it's something like MicroStrategy, though it isn't yet. I'm not sure if I don't really like that much the MicroStrategy play. You know how it's like silent leverage in the system. That when it breaks, if it breaks, I think it could be really dangerous. So for a public company in Brazil that has $4 million in their treasury, it sounds like a risky bet. But I mean, I don't think that they have a better bet if they need to save in Brazilian reals, right?
The stock is up 2x since they made the announcement, by the way. So well, over the span of like 3 weeks, the stock is up 2x, which, as people know in public markets, is rarely seen. So yeah, I mean, Metaplanet in Japan is doing something very similar as well. And I think it's just accessing these different pools of capital around the world. But yeah, there's a very real risk of people getting burned here on this trade if they lever up, right? Like I think the company taking 10% of its reals and saying, hey, we want to allocate to Bitcoin, great move. Just please be careful for the sake of this entire industry.
This is the chart.
Look at that. This is the opposite of the real chart.
Yeah, on April 9th, each Melius stock was the price was around $3. No, 3 reais, 3 Brazilian reais. And today it's 6.51, literally 2x.
Yep.
It's crazy how people think like, no, capital markets are super complex. It's the same thing. Supply and demand, narrative, absolute narrative in the long term, technology and fundamentals. No, narrative in the short term, technology and fundamentals in the long term. So man, real exciting news. Next week we're recording live, right?
Yeah. So I'm actually heading to Mexico City and I'll be there all of May and we'll be cooking a lot of things together. So we'll definitely be recording this one live. And I'm honestly just super looking forward to hang out with you and our team and just the Frontera crew, bring everyone together.
Amazing, man. We should do a meetup. Let's talk about it. And for you that you're listening, you can follow me at AbrahamCR. You can follow Kush at 0xkush on X. Also subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you for listening, and we'll chat with you next week to get more insights about crypto in Latin America. So thank you. Have a good one, and enjoy your week. Bye-bye.